If there's one thing I always wanted to be in Sea of Thieves, it's a rogue. I mean, hey, I'm rocking the legendary rogue title for a reason, and whilst it was possible to do sneaky plays in this game, we never had the weapon to back up that playstyle. Until today, because Season 12 is here, and with it we got a whole arsenal of new weapons. Anything from big guns to blast your foes, all the way to summoning skeletons to do your bidding. And of course, the throwing knives. That's right, my friends, we can sneak, stab, and stealth our way to victory thanks to the addition of this dagger, which is exactly what we are going to do today, but not until we have found all the other weapons Rare has added in Season 12. I mean, hey, the essence of being a rogue is to take advantage of every tool in your arsenal, and what better way to get that advantage than by collecting every such tool? Can I overcome the odds as a solo stealth rogue player, or am I going to bite off more than I can chew? There's only one way to find out, once I found them. Yeah, well, everyone immediately gets access to the new pistol and throwing knives just by accessing their armory. The other weapons need to be found out in the open world, though in my excitement over these things I ended up forgetting about one more weapon that has been added to the game.
Whoa, hold up, what? We start with scatter shots?
We got so many new toys to play with I couldn't even remember all of them. The scatter shot is exactly what it sounds like, a projectile that splits into multiple smaller projectiles when fired, but we'll be trying that out later. For now, I decided to head out while sailing under the flag of the Merchant Alliance because, well, I still had not completed my ledger at the time and definitely wanted that merchant drip, which definitely did not stop me from immediately playing around with my new weapons. I might have had a bit too much fun and forgot that I had some food on the stove, but that's neither here nor there. So here's a cool feature about the throwing knife. If you miss your target, up to 5 of your daggers can stick in whatever surface they hit and you can pick them back up to replenish your ammo. But also, if you switch away from the dagger loadout, your 5 daggers are still there and you can still pick them up and use them. Obviously, you can't stash them away if you're not wielding a throwing knife loadout, and carrying it around like that makes you really slow. Not to mention that enemy players can pick these things up as much as you can. Speaking of enemy players, I finally came across another vessel to try my new toys on. The lack of cosmetics suggested that this might be a new player. While I don't try to make it a habit to attack swabbies, their ship was in the wrong place at the wrong time and as such would have to suffice for my target practice. The scatter shots were definitely hard to land on a small vessel like that, so I figured I should try and take things up close and personal. And what better way to do that than via the brand new harpoon tightrope mechanic.
Do not look over to me. I don't do well under pressure. Hold up, give me a sec. Wait, hold up. No.
I tried.
Hey!
Come back here.
Don't just let your ship sink. What the hell, dude? God damn it. These are so hard to land. Come back here.
Now, I assure you that I was making a bona fide attempt to take this person out. However, it was very obvious I was not yet confident with my new weapon loadout. My grand chase through New Golden Sands ended not only in several failed attempts to Assassin's Creed him, but ultimately in my execution by a blunderbuss as I tried to recover my daggers. But hey, this is not a tool for open combat anyway. It's a stealth weapon. Since that person's vessel had sunk, but he had not yet sold all of his treasure, I decided to go for a sneaky play and wait until he tried to pick it back up. In a perhaps unsurprising twist, our friend over here decided to ignore the treasure and instead went straight for my ship to hit me with the Swabby special. Not sure why new players love firebombs so much, but bringing a knife to a gunfight certainly was very scary. Though once I managed to lure him onto the top deck...
Haha! Victorious at last! We now get to cash in. A well-deserved loot. Victory. 1,500 golds. It's all ours.
It might not be much, but it's honest work. Okay, maybe it's not honest work. It's more like stealing candy from a toddler, but candy is candy at the end of the day. Now, because I was not in the mood for merchant deliveries, I decided to take on a C4 to combine getting at least some amount of treasure, whilst also getting a feel for my new weapon loadout. It certainly was not the most efficient way to go about leveling my emissary flag, but hey, it's a marathon, not a sprint. But you know what? If I truly wanted to test these weapons, I needed to try them out against a variety of different enemy types. Phantom died in one shot from any gun anyway, and I was certain that there was more PvP to be had even if I was not looking for it. So I decided to tackle some mermaid treasuries for multiple reasons. For one, these bad boys have a chance of spawning a Horn of Fair Winds, which was definitely on my agenda, but also, if I can find a coral message in a bottle, they would also give me a Breath of the Sea, which would help me greatly in finishing my merchant grind since they can be sold to any of the main companies. Once one such message in a bottle was acquired, I set sail for the treasury noted within. And man, just swimming down to the dang thing, I realized that using these weapons underwater was going to be a massive pain in the butt. Here is my candid reaction after just a couple of waves in this arena.
Bro, come on! Stop it! Let the suffering end, please!
Yeah, this was a horrible decision. Trying to stab anything underwater was obviously a futile effort, but even with me having 2 bullets in the chamber, the double-barrel pistol was not powerful enough to defeat anything in any reasonable amount of time. Because it was so massive, taking precision shots felt so much more difficult than with a regular flintlock or eye of reach. Now in fairness, there are Disney sticks all across the arena, and these things are literally designed for PvE encounters. So using any gun in a treasury is honestly a waste of time, but there is something to be said about these weapons feeling very ineffective against anything that does not die in one hit. The good news? I did indeed find a Horn of Fair Winds inside its vault, or what I'm gonna call it from now on, the Wind Waker. And guess what? It was immediately useful, because as I arrived back at my ship to reclaim my treasure from the mermaid, I found a rank 5 Reaper emissary not too far away from me, which gave me a chance to put this thing to good use.
Oh no, you know what sucks? I don't have wind right now, and I really want to sell my loot before the Reaper gets here. Oh, if only I had something to speed up the travel. Are you ready for this? Yeah! Hell yeah!
So far, the Wind Waker might be the most exciting thing they added, simply because of the possibilities that it opens up. From chasing to running to crazy naval maneuvers, I was excited to find out what this thing was capable of. And since I found it in my first treasury, surely that means that they were not too difficult to get a hand of, right? Right? Unfortunately, past me is unaware of the knowledge that burdens present me, and as such, he decided to sell the item along with the rest of my loot. Which is when I found out that, apparently, it too is a faction-agnostic item. Not that you're gonna be stacking tons of these anytime soon, but it's definitely good to know. Thankfully, I had more than one message in a bottle sending me to the Shrine of Ocean's Fortune. Shrines, as opposed to their treasury counterpart, are composed of a number of puzzles, which definitely was not my strong suit. But before I even got there, I found a stationary brigantine taking shots at me. One of them tried to board my vessel, immediately taking a dagger to the face. I can confidently say that I was slowly getting a hang of how to use this weapon, so much so that I decided to fire on over and show their crew what happens when you bark at the wrong tree. But let's not forget that I'm not a butcher, I'm a rogue, so of course I could not resist but to go for a little sneak play.
Assassino! Assassino! Okay, I'm gonna leave them alone. Thankfully, they new players. One guy was just chilling over there at the tavern. Oh man, that's too funny.
Now this was the type of stuff I imagined to do when I found out they're adding a throwing knife that doubles as a dagger. Using specific hide emotes that make your nameplate disappear in combination with a charged up stab was satisfying beyond belief. By the way, you can unlock this fancy barrel hide emote from Lorena at any outpost. Unfortunately, this crew had nothing to steal, so I left them alone in search of more profitable ventures. It was then that I found out that shrines and treasuries are not guaranteed to give you a Wind Waker, even if you bring a coral message in a bottle. Definitely not a fan of that one after how much effort I put into trying to remember how to do these puzzles. But hey, there are more places where you can find these things. Shipwrecks are also said to have a chance of spawning Wind Wakers, just that in my case, I was not so lucky. Made worse by the fact that I was currently hunting another vessel when I found that shipwreck. Not only did I just let go of my prey for nothing, but regret really set in over having sold my previous Wind Waker, considering that item would have allowed me to catch up to them. But hey, crying was not gonna fix that, so all I could do was continue clearing more shrines and checking every shipwreck I could find. Whilst that helped me gather a new batch of loot, I was deprived of the one item I actually did all that for. So when another brigantine decided to show up to attack me, I felt this was the perfect opportunity to let off some steam. That was until they began begging for their lives.
Hello, my brother. Sorry for attacking you. We didn't want to do that. I'm sorry.
You sorry?
Yeah, my friend's just stupid.
Are you on PlayStation?
Yeah, we bought this game just now.
Oh, hell yeah. Alright, well, you guys have fun. I accept your apology. Enjoy your time in the game.
It's as I like to say, mics save lives. An apology can go a long way, and judging by their attire, it was a likely story that they really were new PS5 players. And since they didn't have any treasure for me to steal anyway, I decided to leave them be. For now. Listen here, gamers, deception is part of every rogue's arsenal, and sometimes it's better to participate in catch and release tactics. Why should I sink them now when they have nothing to steal, when instead I can wait for them to gather treasure to to then take it away from them. All I had to do now was go sell my loot at the neighboring port before watching these swabbies take on a skelly fort. I decided to strategically park my ship in a way that makes it look like a newly spawned vessel, but just as a precaution, I took my storage crate full of supplies and decided to hide it in the sewers in case I do get sunk whilst away. Because now, my friends, it is time for the stealth play. I took my rowboat and headed out in the dead of night. It was unfortunately already morning by the time I arrived at the fort, but that was fine because they were still busy trying to deal with the skeletons. Hiding inside one of the towers felt like a safe play. No skelly could reach me here, and usually players don't have a reason to come here shy of hiding or finding somebody who is hiding. Also, here's a pro tip: you can walk into the corner of these towers sliding upwards before turning around to get on the beams. This would grant me the best view of the fort as well as the crew currently taking it on. And now that I have told you the secret, unfortunately I'm going to have to assassinate you unless you hit the like button, so go ahead to stab it. I am already in your walls, just like I'm about to be on their ship. And I know what some of you are thinking. Really, Cliff? You're about to steal a skull fort from a bunch of swabbies? That hardly seems like it's worth the effort. And you would be right, because it's not the puny amount of loot I'm after. I want to get my hands on bone collars. You see, this was day 1 of release for season 12, and all I knew was that skeleton forts had a higher chance of rewarding that new weapon. But I did not know what that would look like. Is there a storage crate in the vault? Do they just spawn in their resource barrels? The only way to find out was by taking a look. And who knows, it was possible that these guys already had some in their possession. No bone collars. Oh my god. Oh my god. He was right there. He was right there. Nothing like a swabby taking a plunge whilst holding a chest of 1,000 grogs. This whole encounter truly was testing my patience, because them being new to the game, they did not know that they could use the harpoons to get the treasure onto their boat more efficiently. Man, if only they watched my from 0 to 1 million video. But when all the treasure was finally moved onto their ship, I did not find a storage crate of any sort. Chances of them being in possession of bone collars was slim, so I decided to jump off whilst they were playing music to check the barrels of the fort myself. Unfortunately, to no avail. This entire mission was a huge bust, leaving me not only without treasure, but also without a single collar of bones. Karmic justice for me trying to rob swabbies? Maybe, but that does not mean that I would be giving up. Sure, a skeleton fort might have a higher chance of spawning them, but they technically can still spawn in any random barrel. So I returned to my vessel, reclaimed my supply crate, and began searching for that coveted item. Spoiler alert for the Pirate Legend hideout. You unlock this place once you reach level 50 with the 3 main companies, and if you don't want to get spoiled, skip ahead to the timestamp on screen right now. What matters for us is that having access to this place also means that we have access to additional barrels, and inside here, we finally found it.
Yes! Yes, we found a bone collar, let's go! Thank you, Pirate Legend hideout.
We were back on track, because not only did we get our hands on our first bone collar, but I also found yet another Wind Waker, which, by the way, is a great tool to get away from hungry sharks. With this item in my possession, as well as a couple more bone collars I found throughout my journey, I was ready to head into the big leagues, the big money, if you will. With all these tools at my disposal, I'd be unstoppable. Nobody, not even that sloop over there, would be able to stop this master rogue from conquering this server.
I'm coming over. Ah!
Okay, this is not what I was expecting. Rather than being faced with a ferocious foe, I instead had to deal with a child that insisted to hire on my boat. Obviously, I'm not in the business of making use of child labor, and as such, offered some treasure just to get off of my case.
Go raise an emissary flag, I'm gonna give you some loot.
Don't want to, I just need friendship.
Well, I can't give you friendship, unfortunately.
Well, I can come with you.
No, you cannot.
Yeah.
Nuh-uh.
Yeah.
Nuh-uh.
We had a difficult case on our hands. No matter how often I ejected this fella from my vessel, he just kept coming back. Even when I went to Daggertooth Outpost to sell my loot, he continued to follow me and begged to be taken under my wing. The only saving grace I had was that he was in an open crew, and eventually another person had joined the ship. My final offer to him was that he could have the Ritual and Destiny Skulls to go and take on the Fort of the Damned whilst under my protection. If you don't know what that means, just know this. RGB Skull plus Fort of the Damned equals money. It's an endgame piece of content that is quite lucrative, which obviously he did not have access to just yet. Meaning, I offered him the prospect of a massive loot haul just to leave me alone. Did I plan to stick to my word and actually protect them when they take on that fort? I'd rather not answer that question. Not that it matters, because it didn't take long for them to seek me out once again. And what did they bring? a brigantine. No better time to use the bone collars I found than now, but first I had to put myself in an advantageous position. The wind collar allowed me to swiftly maneuver around their vessel, taking down at least one of the masts on every single pass. The fog was definitely getting in my way though. I had trouble properly navigating with that limited visibility, and since I was helm, cannoneer, and bilge at the same time, things got hectic in a hurry. The best thing I could do was take the fight to them after having immobilized their vessel, because there I could unleash my secret weapon and reveal that I was in fact not alone.
Okay, cover my board.
Oh, nice. Oh, my neck. No, you just couldn't.
Oh god. Oh god. No, 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 not the blunderbuss. Oh god. Gotta deal with the skellies. Yes, let's go! This is my crew! Yes! I need more knives. There we go. We are victorious! Yes! Good job, Megalodon Johns, 2 Heavens Evans, as well as Hardy Vardy. Never forget Hardy Vardy.
What a fight that was. Even against overwhelming odds, I managed to come out on top. Granted, my opponents were not necessarily of the highest caliber, but they did grossly outnumber me, and let's just say that it does not take an esports pro to kill somebody with a blunderbuss. Sadly, that victory did not last, because by using the brigantine warp speed, these guys had returned to the Fort of the Damned before me. And to make matters worse...
That's another brigantine. What? What is happening here? Why is there so many brigantines?
What started as a small squabble turned into an outright invasion. I had expended most of my bone collars on the previous encounter, and unlike them, they could not just come back from the Pharaoh of the Damned. It became obvious that these 2 ships were in cahoots. Ignoring the immobilized French vessel, the new contender made it their job to hunt me down. Having to fight 3 pirates on my own was difficult enough, but 6? Yeah, this was a battle I could not win. But don't worry, my friends, because I came prepared. I plopped down a dive for another voyage before grabbing my trusty Wind Waker to sail straight against the wind. Even if the brigantine is the fastest ship in the game, headwind against the magical properties of my horn, there was no way for them to catch up. And with that, I am pleased to let you know that this rogue got away once more. But this is it for our story here today. If you happen to be one of those aforementioned new PS5 pirates, may I direct you to my supercard title from 0 to 1 million gold? This one is going to arm you with all the knowledge necessary to collect your first fortune on the Sea of Thieves. You can find the card on screen right now. But until then, thank you everybody so much for watching. I hope you guys have a day filled with riches on the sea. And until next time, peace.